Yes.
Okay, good. Good. So the three of us, I think we'll introduce ourselves as we go along. The three of us are connected, and you'll find out the story of our connection as we continue. Is that okay? Instead of the formal connection.
So would it be okay if I asked Suzanne and Aju to introduce themselves to you all before?
Please.
Suzanne or Aju, would you be happy to go?
My name is Aju. I currently in Pennsylvania, but I live in Maryland, United States. I'm continent Africa.
Yeah.
I'm from Nigeria. I was born in the United States, but before I was born, I moved back to Nigeria because my parents are Nigerian, and grew up there and came back to the United States after secondary school graduation. So my heart is full of joy to be here.
Lovely.
And I'm Suzanne, and I'm watching the sunrise from Michigan in the United States. But I have a connection to Africa in that I spent my middle school years in Kenya and my high school years in Nigeria. So it's such a treat to just be with you from across the world.
I'm Steve. I'm in Boston. I just woke up from a nap. I'm realizing I'm not as young as I sometimes think I am. But this is so lovely. Morning's broken here too. This started at 8 p.m. in the evening last night for us. So we're getting close to the halfway point.
Sure.
Happy to be here. Therese, will you help us know how you would like us to participate in this today?
Maybe Linda and Marsha can also say a bit. We have two stories to share, and Linda will start off. My beloved friend and trusting partner at the Cape Narrative Co-op, and she'll start off the storytelling, and then we thought of ending the second story. Marsha and I will be telling together, and then I don't know, how does it normally go? Do people stop in between, or shall we see how it goes?
How big a fan of normal do you think I am?
You're a big fan of?
How big a fan of normal do you think I am? I don't.
So we do that one.
Yeah, so we can
Do that one. Oh, lovely. Okay.
We just and see what happens.
So Linda, maybe you'd like to start to start from Africa, from Cape Town.
Yes, and this morning I was listening to a song called "Welcome to Cape Town," which is the spirit of the southern tip of Africa, is to turn difficult times and tragedy into huge humor. So if anybody wants to watch that, the lyrics of the song have been changed, and if you have an African spirit, you will see why this particular song is so uplifting in such difficult and unsure times. So I'm Linda. I met Therese 20 years ago. We are old lovers in narrative. We met when we were first trained by people like Elle-Marie on this platform today, and we met, and various other people, Dirk Kotz and Elise Morkel, and we came from very different worlds. I came from a background of teaching, and Therese came from a background of the big world of drama, journalism, poetry. So she was like, for me, like meeting a real grown-up. And when we met, we found that we had a connection of like-mindedness. And so this thing we're going to tell you today is about how we bring narrative work into the local. And in South Africa, you would say the local is lekker, which means the local is good. It tastes well. So scaffolding locally and looking at a narrative ethic of response. And this is an unusual view, as I've come to find Therese take, of if you look for the standard photographs of Cape Town. I've lived here for many years as an immigrant to Cape Town, and I've never seen this orientation. And she's going to roll over to the next slide, where you will see that we work from, at the top slide, we work from the very privileged communities to the communities that are the epicenter of social inequality and poverty. Also known, as you're going to learn about in today's conversation with Therese and Martha, about the area known as the Cape Flats. We so often feel joined by Michael in the spirit of his work, how the theory meets us in these places and it never lets us down, you know. The orientation of Michael's work is always available to us. These ideas of scaffolding, of moving to what is possible to know, and the very big one of noticing that which is not seen or not obvious, that absent but implicit that we learned of through Michael. We were so fortunate to have Michael visit here twice, and there's this tease about me sitting in the front row, and one of my teachers said, I thought you were going to fall off your chair onto the floor. You were so enraptured by what he had to say. And I think this idea of being introduced to experience near in local contexts. Narrative doesn't let us down in Africa. It gives us such opportunity to work.
I'm the slide mover.
And the slide finder. We loved your metaphor, Steve, of the wave. And we've been able to, just in getting ready for this morning, to think about our relationship and reflecting and remembering our relationship and some of the swirls that have risen and fallen over the past 20 years since Therese and I first met, out studying together. And we met each other on training and liked each other enormously, but we didn't get together after that. And then years later, we realized that we were both working in communities of schools, upskilling lay counselors, and working in this strange mix between privilege and poverty. And already believing 20 years ago, when we first studied our narrative work, that we could not just keep this magnificent theory to ourselves, that this was work that needed to be shared and to be used in the everyday. And so a few years ago, 7 in fact, Therese and I officially hooked up with this dream in mind. And the gently rolling waves of our practice are what we now call, rather with a bit of a breath before, because those of you who followed South African history would know that we've been in a very active process in the last 7 years of decolonizing in our country. And we speak about our narrative practice as decolonizing therapy. And after 7 years, volgende Therese, of working and teaching together, we have now been so fortunate. Somebody spotted the work that Therese was doing in her poetry and work in the Cape Flats communities, and suggested to her that we apply to become an official trust. And at first we went, oh, we're too old. This isn't this sounds like hard work. No, we're not money people. We'll never manage. And these kind people gently pushed us in this direction and held our hands. And the hope of this narrative trust work is to take it into places where people really do hold power, to restore children's lives. And not just to restore children's lives, but to restore the lives of people who have only had single sort of dominant stories available to them. The people who work with children every day on the playgrounds, in the classrooms, in the aftercares, the youth centers and the sports communities. And recently with COVID, we realized that the parents and the families need to be reached too. So taking these narrative ideas into these communities is what we would like to present as our understanding of a narrative ethic of response. Therese, you can go on.
Linda, you're doing so beautifully. I don't know, I feel like please continue. So then COVID came and the trust had just been set up, and then we had the training sessions organized, set up, and then COVID happened, so we had to Zoom up and change the way that we do the conversations with people. And at the time, Linda has been working for a long time in a particular school community in the Cape, and she got a request from the pre-primary teacher to say that the parents there are experiencing a lot of struggles around their kids' experiences of worry and anxiety. And then don't we have a couple of tips that we can or advice that we can pass on? And Linda said, you know what? I'll chat with Therese, but I'll have a plan. And then Linda came up with a plan that we offer to parents an introduction to narrative evening. We first did it an appetizer, where parents just could get the gist of it. And then we had a full 3-hour presentation around the ideas, the externalizing conversations, to parents around worry. Yeah, and we've had beautiful feedback about that, because for us the idea is very much strongly situated around not only therapists are ones who do therapeutic work. Parents can also have an influence. They're well positioned to have a really powerful influence on the story making that they do with the children in their care. So that was the idea. That's our thinking around this. Luckily, because of the trust actually created the scaffold for us that enabled us to be able to respond to the teachers, to the parents' request at the time. So we're actually amazed at how these things just happened, hey, Linda?
Mm. I think also just like our work is, you know, those of you who are less familiar with current South Africa, one would wish and dream that the old divides weren't in existence anymore. So far after the change of the regime in the country, but sadly we have a long way to go, and I feel that we are only at the beginning of understanding how transformation really happens. And again, you know, this idea of you can't just rush off into communities and do community work. You can't just have the gospel of narrative and go and spread it around, because people are really not interested. You know, what have you got to offer? And so Elmarie taught me years ago about this idea of troubling the water. You give a bit of yourself, and then that person says, okay, well, I'll give this. And you sort of do this negotiation of a negotiation of trust, really. And years ago, when I was a dark-haired young student, there was a slogan of, I was already interested in education of the UDM, of each one, teach one. And we've taken that idea to get into communities where we would otherwise not be welcome or not be trusted. And so we use this idea of each one, reach one. So the previous slide shows a hall full of 60 teachers, but they were all personally invited by teachers who knew us, who'd worked with us, who had carried narrative ideas for a number of years, and then invited more people into community. And this idea of narrative for us being embedded in a context is something that we're very lit up about at the moment, because you can take different views. And back to your wave, Steve, is you can take a shot of a wave and you can say, this is the situation, this is the context. But you can also act on a wave, and you can create a wave, and you can create a swell and a movement. And that is what we feel we are busy with untold joy coming back to us, where suddenly our biggest problem, who would have thought, is that people can't afford bandwidth or don't have devices that can have access, or that's really where we're needing to apply our minds. But we've managed to reach more people in this COVID lockdown time than we would have reached in a whole year before.
Wow.
Isn't that an unexpected joy?
Yeah.
Yeah. The practice we think about as we sort of have it's Cape Town, South Africa has gone into radical lockdown immediately almost. And everybody got to learn this term social distancing. And Cape Town happens to be the epicenter of COVID. We heard on the news this morning that we hold 2/3 of the cases in the country, in the Cape Town surround. So that beautiful picture you saw on slide 1 and 2. And we're sort of pushing back with the typical narrative resistance of the idea of social distancing, and see our narrative practice as a practice of social close bringing. So maybe we can put that into a wave. Nou het ek genoeg gesê, Therese.
Can you say that, what you're calling it again?
A practice of social close bringing, as opposed to distancing, the opposite movement. To find practices of social close bringing. Beautiful story of a little boy that we came across in one of our mentoring groups, whose mum had, he decided on Freedom Day to kiss some of his most beloved fluffy toys goodbye and send them, not his throwaway toys, the ones he loved, and sent them off into the Cape Flats to a children's refuge center. And a beautiful story emerged of this little young boy. Is in grade 1, he's 7. And the spirit of concern that he held about him looking forward to a great birthday, and there being other children that would maybe be sad or lonely or not have toys. And this has started a wave, a movement in the school that he goes to, where now outreach parcels go with letters and with messages and with prayers to say, when you're eating this sandwich, I'll be thinking of you, not just a bowl of soup. And so these kind of, yeah, I mean, it as South Africa, we're always living in exciting times. We are used to riding waves down here.
Thank you, Linda. Wow.
Okay, Therese.
Steve, any of the other people want to take up the story here, or witness or speak to anything, or would you like me to continue, me and Marsha to continue, Marsha and I? Steve?
I would love to make space for Suzanne and Aju to respond or ask questions or share where they got moved to and listen. Would that be all right, Linda?
Lovely, thank you.
I find myself just wanting to just keep listening. So, but I will say I was captured by so many things. I think personally I've been looking for sparkling moments around Zoom and storing something more preferred than what it's like to kind of approach the computer these days. And so it's been inspiring to listen to you and the possibilities that it has brought to your community and to feel hopeful about that. And then I just love this image of troubling the water and creating the swell. I think Steve's idea of the wave captured me, but hearing you describe it more as you can actually put your finger in the water and start creating ripples. I think it's going to take me places. I'm not quite sure where, but yeah, so I'm eager to hear more, I think is where I am right now.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah, I feel the same way in terms of I want to keep on listening. You know, I'm being taken so many places, and at the same time loving where I am right now with the stories that I'm hearing. I'm also being moved by the stories of the pictures. You know, the pictures are telling their own stories, and is taking me to many places, but it's also making me closer to the community in Cape Town. So yes, there's so many of the terms that is really hitting home. The idea of I love the description of how tragedy is made into humor. I know it, I've experienced it in Nigeria and understood exactly when you guys said it. And I'm inspired by this idea of standing up to this idea of social distancing and, taking it up and saying, no, we want to kind of be in social close bringing. So just very moved by so many things. Thank you.
And that term, I must say, is Linda's term. Linda's coined that term, social close bringing. She should have the byline for that one. Yeah.
I did very poorly in English at school. I got C's and D's because I always sort of got my words wrong. But it fits narrative.
Yeah, I'm with my colleagues. Just being mesmerized in the listening of the story, and it's hard for me not to also just be taken to the witnessing of Therese's unbelievable skill and rigor and care and respect in her practices that I witnessed up close. And the idea that the two of you are being so like radically respectful and not inadvertently bringing narrative as another colonizing kind of thing, but finding a way to be culturally respectful. And that idea of I didn't quite understand, but like each one, can you say it again, the each one and the
Yes. So in the old in the 80s, sort of just before the grip of apartheid broke, one of the the biggest, one of the biggest injuries to our country is the inequity of education. And so each one needs to be responsible to teach one. So if you have an education, you teach somebody else. It was the idea of that movement. And so it was just a play on that idea, Steve, of that if you have been connected to narrative work and it has moved you and you see a place, your responsibility or your invitation is to reach, to bring another person in. Each one reach one.
Thank you. Yeah, the spirit of that really seemed so strong when you told the story of what's happening in the school, and you know, that when you eat this sandwich, I'll be thinking of you. And you know what a practice of teaching that makes things possible, that's, you know, sort of embodied in that story. So it's just very heartening and inspiring to listen. Wonderful.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for such rich and beautiful feedback. And Steve, thank you for noticing the reverence with which we hold this work. And I'm really going to hand over to Therese now, who, with Marsha, who I've learned to met very recently, but I feel like she's an old friend of mine already. So I really look forward to, that was just the taster, and I can highly recommend the main course coming.
This is just another stories, another context that we'd like to share a little bit of Marsha and I. So maybe I'll just give a little bit of background to this creative writing work that I've been doing for the past 15 years in various communities. And 2 years ago, I was approached by the Jack Carville Foundation they wanted to sponsor this work in a school community. And then I thought, let's do it at the school where Jacques Carville himself once taught. Why not? And that was Grassy Park High School. Jacques Carville the legacy of Jacques Carville is often associated with his social activism. He was an anti-apartheid activist. Later, he was also the private secretary to Nelson Mandela. And an important part of his legacy was the love of people, especially young people, that the love of language, especially Afrikaans, which is my moedertaal, my home language, and you'll hear it shine through from time to time. And then also, Carville has this also part of that big legacy of social justice making that continuous. So then we phoned Grassy Park and we set up a meeting with the principal, who was Marsha Woolward. And Marsha, please take up the story, will you, at that point?
Okay, hello everybody again. Yes, it was interesting. Now, just to introduce myself a little bit, I retired from teaching last year, but at the point when I met Teresa, which was 2 years ago, so I'm very new and young in the narrative theory, but very excited about it. So I've been at the school, that's my first school. I started there as a young teacher because it's in the area that I live. And 11 years ago, I became principal. And so it was in my role as principal. Now, Grassy Park High draws learners from the immediate area, which is probably something like a lower middle class area, but it also draws from outlying areas, which are gang-infested areas. So there's about 7 or 8 areas around Grassy Park where a number of parents will choose to send their children to the school. but it also brings with it a lot of its own challenges, because the home situation of a lot of these children is really, really dire. So in one school, you'll have from poverty-stricken to perhaps a little bit more resourced families. And also, again, unfortunately, legacy of apartheid, we have limited resources. So when it comes to any kind of extramural activities, and especially cultural activities, it's really difficult to get teachers on board because they are heavily loaded. So when Teresa and Theo, who is from the trust, came in and met with me, I was excited. I was excited at the idea of our children being exposed, our learners being exposed to creative writing, to poetry. But I was also excited about the narrative part of it. But there were quite a few challenges involved here. And when Teresa first said to me, I need 6 hours with your teachers to do training, I almost died. Because teachers are heavily, they are loaded. They've got curriculum coverage pressures, they've got meetings and workshops that are compulsory. And if you're asking them to give 6 hours of their own time, it's like trying to draw blood out of a stone. But between Teresa and myself, we thought, you know what, we'll find a way around this. We'll find a way where we will sneak in these 6 hours over a period of time so that at least we get the teachers on board. And it was, for me, a matter of almost casting out a net and seeing how many people we can catch in that net. How many people would connect to the narrative. And then it also then became a personal journey for me. Because Teresa started with the learners, and gosh, it was tough because a lot of them travel out of Grassy Park. They're not always keen to stay after school, so that was seriously challenging. But Teresa learned a lot of patience at Grassy Park, and but we hung in there. Between us, we hung in there because I really wanted this for the learners, but also I really wanted it because I know there's a lot of learners who would benefit from the narrative therapy part of it. So yes, so Teresa and I started this journey, and she started the program. Sometimes it'd be a few, and sometimes there'd be more. But eventually, there was a solid group that would come. And then I started popping in, and because I enjoyed this engagement with the kids. And then there was a particular day when the kids had agreed with Teresa they were going to write poetry with the theme of mother, and one of the boys connected it to food, because that's the association. And Teresa threw it out at me. She said, "Are you also going to write a poem?" And I said, "You know what, I'll think about it." Now, Mom had passed away in 2012. And, as the thoughts went through my mind, now, as a principal, we also have our plates full. But the Tuesday afternoon, your sessions, when I could, I would go and pop in, because that was just something different. It was just a different space, and a beautiful space to be in with kids. And then eventually I wrote a poem, but I was very shy about it. I shared it with Teresa, and then she said to me, "No, share it with the kids." And that is what we did. And the poem was about my mom's birthday. So the pic there is me sharing it with the children. And they commented on it, which was a form of witnessing for me. So it was really a wonderful experience. And I think that as Teresa's part of the program came to the end, and my professional time at the school came to an end, she and Theo offered or asked me to continue with the project. So that was my first retirement activity. And it's been a wonderful experience. Okay, Teresa, which part of it would you like me to continue with? Or are you going to come in here?
Marsha, please, don't you want to read that whole poem? It's such a lovely poem. It's
I will do so.
yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah.
It's called Mom's Birthday. Only a small party, close family, roast chicken, maybe curry. Only a small party and close friends. I bought a tongue and corned beef was cheap. Only a small party. Will you fetch Auntie Babs? She is my only sister. I suppose Linda will come too, with her empty ice cream bucket. Only a small party. Oh, Patty will bring Auntie Babs and Linda with her ice cream bucket. But will you fetch Auntie Sylvie and Iris and pick up Mona on your way? The others will get here. Only a small party. Of course, Yvonne and Carol will come. I promised on my brother's deathbed I would look after them. Now they are married with children. Will you take Minnie and Mary and Margie home? Only a small party. I made fruitcake and coconut tarts and rolls and donuts, trifle and jelly separate. For the children, you know. The leg of lamb is roasting, the gammon is cooked, and my stuffing is ready. It's only a small party. And that was testament to the way my mother saw her birthdays. It started out very small. And that's where, and when I shared it with the kids, the first comment was, I can smell the curry. And the second comment was, it's about Cape culture. And this is where I learned that in narrative and in witnessing, it goes both ways. Because these are my students, but I felt so good about what it was that they said. I then also shared it with my daughter who's in Vietnam, and she sent back a message and said, Mom, please share it with the family. I was at the party with some other South Africans in Vietnam. I read the poem to them. We started laughing, and then we all burst into tears because we became homesick. And that is, for me, other people could relate to the poem. So Teresa, thank you.
Thank you, Marsha. I'm so happy that you shared that poem again, because it still makes me laugh after all the many times that I've heard it. And I remember the delight with which the young poets listened to it as well. I must say that first Marsha came and sat in the sessions as the principal. And what was so lovely is that that sense of mutuality right from the start, and of actually making me feel so welcome. It's hard to come into a community where you don't know anybody and you have dreams for bringing a program that you know may be meaningful or not. And from past experience, I've come to know that for these programs to really lit up in children's lives, you have to have the support of at least one teacher at the school. And I said to Marsha, at least one person. And you know what? She became that person. So sometimes in the passage outside, there was one time when Alia, one of the girls in the picture, she was kind of attempting to come to the first session, but not sure. And Marsha passed her on the way. You want to say something about that, Marsha? And you saw she was kind of tentative about joining. And what did you do then?
Yes, I saw her, and she was sort of standing and uncertain. Do I go? Don't I go? And I said, "Are you going to your session with Teresa?" And she said, and she was so shy. She said, "Miss, I don't know. I'm shy. I can't speak." I said, "You know what? It's okay. You don't have to speak. Teresa's okay with that." And I said, "Come, I hook you in, and come we walk in together." And that is how she joined.
And that part of the story where you just offered your arm to and said, come with me, and we go in together. And I feel quite tearful when I think of this as the narrative way of this way of doing the mutuality. It's also something that I've so appreciated in watching Steve work, and the way that the mutuality and the caring for relationship creates a spirit out of which a poetry project can grow, out of which sustainable projects can grow. It's not about the project, it's about the relationships. And I remember that first day I saw Marsha, she was wearing a shawl. She can't remember, but I can remember. It was a crochet shawl. And I thought, I've met many principals in my time, in my 15 years doing this work, and I've never met a principal wearing a shawl. And that image stayed with me. And as I got to know Marsha better and see her involvement in the group, there was another beautiful story where she came into the group and there were new poets, young poets in the group, and I could see the apprehension on their faces. And she registered that apprehension and she calmed them and she said, "Don't think today of me as your principal, think of me as your fellow poet." And she went and she squeezed into one of the benches. And that was kind of, for me, that shawl became like the metaphor of, that crocheted shawl became like a metaphor of that kind of the doing of mutuality and that patient crafting of relationship that was the gift that Marsha brought also to the group and to the project and to my life. That warming the space. Many a day we would stay after the session, Marsha, and talk about life. And it was a friendship emerging. So at one point I wanted to give to Marsha what she meant to me in this. And then I wrote her a poem. The project actually started because my own poetry was published, poems were published how it started, but I never thought actively of bringing poetry to it. But in this relationship with Marsha, I wrote her an Afrikaans poem. And then for today's conversation, Marsha and Eunice, the English teacher at the school, helped in translating this poem into English, and it's called Principle on the Cape Flats for Marsha. You get up from behind your desk, a crocheted shawl around your shoulders, something from another era, a memory of the patient ritual between fingers, hook and yarn. Insert, loop, pull, repeat, night after night alongside a radio serial. In the riptide of the hood and school, reports of unrest, revolt, broken windows, stray bullets, dirty cops, amidst the constant eroding by absenteeism, disillusionment, 6-point solutions, forever skepticism, shoulder shruggings, you get up. There's a crocheted shawl around your shoulders, and because you already know, I too understand that hope's delicate design is made by hand. As Marsha said, then she took over the group from this year. Marsha started the group, she took over the group. I'm just popping in from time to time. I'm now in the support role. And it's so lovely. The spirit, you can also see the spirit of ease and of trust and of safety. It's so clear from these pictures, and it's in the experience as well. And then I started telling Marsha that the Gerwel Foundation wanted me to start up a project, a similar creative writing project at 3 high schools in a small rural town where Jakes Gerwel grew up. It's called Somerset East, and it's and then I went to Somerset East, and then out of the blue I received an email from Marsha. And maybe Marsha, you want to take up on the story why you decided to write this email, because it was a kind of extraordinary moment for me to read it.
Okay. I know that Teresa was going into Somerset East. I know it's a rural area. Poverty levels would probably be high. It's tough in schools. And because I know the context of schools and I know the context of teachers, you know, when you bring a program in that's not compulsory from the education department, people often sort of back off. We're too busy. We don't have time for this. Is this just another thing that you're going to put on us? And I was worried that people would miss out an opportunity. I mean, this has been my personal journey with Teresa, and I am so thankful and grateful for it. And I wouldn't want other people to miss out just because there's a time factor. So I'd written this, and it was meant to be a letter for Teresa to share with the participants in the initial program as an encouragement for them. So this is dated 11th of February 2020. Dear teachers and principals, Ray, endorsing Teresa Hume's work. I am the ex-principal of Grassy Park High School and have worked with Teresa for the past 2 years. I want to share my experiences. I know that teachers are buckling under the demands of the profession and principals carry heavy burdens, and any extra program is viewed with doubt. Is this really for the teacher's benefit, or is it just another idea of someone removed from the realities of teaching, trying to ride on the backs of the school? My encouragement is to let Teresa work her magic. Relax into this program and be open to where it takes you. Observe her work. Teachers are so terribly time-bound that the pace of the program is very different. It is nothing new to us, but because we are caught up in curriculum, it's good to be refreshed. Allow yourself to absorb the learnings, as it may remind you of the way you once viewed children and discipline. Please know that this letter was not a request from Teresa, but because I would not want you to miss out on a genuine attempt to support the amazing work that teachers do under trying circumstances. I wish I had the words to express this in Afrikaans, but I hope you'll catch the gist of it. I'm happy to say that although I have retired, I continue the program of narrative therapy through poetry at my old school. I trained as a life science teacher, but walking alongside Teresa in her work rekindled my love for language and gave me enough confidence to run with it. It also motivated me to write poetry, and the joy of writing and sharing with others has been amazing. I wish you well as you start this journey. Yours sincerely, Marsha Woolward, ex-principal. And yeah, it was just a letter that I hoped would help open some doors for Teresa. And then it took on something a little bit more. And perhaps I hand back to Teresa just to speak about how she received it.
Yeah, it was, you know, when Michael spoke about safeguarding the hope for, I remember in one of the trainings that he did in Cape Town many years ago, he spoke of sometimes a witness can be the one who safeguards the hope for a young client. I remember that. And I was so moved that Marsha, I went through a difficult last 2 years personally, and the word magic never entered my wildest. It wasn't on my horizon, and yet Marsha kept that word. She put that word in the letter, and meant so much. She actually safeguarded that word for me while I couldn't access it. And in this way, by doing this beautiful witnessing, also coming from the knowledge of knowing the resistance that could be part of the initial reception, bringing that into the witnessing that she does, a multi-layered witnessing. She's actually also warmed the space for me in this context, and this is Somerset East. These are the 3 schools where I'll be hopefully taking the work to in the future. So, and we didn't have time today to introduce you to some of the young poets. If you want to read more about them, see more about the experience of the project, you can look it up. I've included my website address there for you to have a further look about what, if you're interested in this. Thank you, Marsha. Is there something you still wanted to say?
No, I think something Stephen said earlier almost emphasized that idea of the work that you do being magic. Am I right, Stephen? Yeah.
No doubt,
So,
but now I experience you in that club, you know, with the skills that you're demonstrating. I mean, I don't, Therese, would you describe the email that Marcia sent as another example of offering an arm, like she did for that girl?
Yes, beautiful. Yes, what a beautiful idea. Yes, actually, yes. And this time I'm the one apprehensive about entering. And she says, no, I'll send this letter ahead of you.
And your poem, oh my God, Therese, like just pierced me. And yeah, it's really like this moment's embodying like the dream I had, this wave that people would get to hear Linda, Marcia, Therese, like, you know, just so. Makes me so happy, you know. So, Suzanne and Aju, is there something you would like to say, reflect?
I am moved beyond words, and you know, all the, you know, I understand Linda when Linda says this is the main course, you know. You know, that idea of creating waves, putting your finger into the water, creating waves, creating movements, you know, really the stories, the poetry, you know, listen, really has demonstrated or was shown in the story. So I am so privileged to be here, to be hearing this. And, you know, I had difficulty with English. I still have difficulty with English. So I like when, you know, big words or what seems to me to be big words to be kind of putting it in more simpler forms. So the idea of neutrality being, can we go in this together, I think would stay with me as, you know, the idea of what marriage is supposed to be, you know, let's walk in together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this idea that we're hosts, and I feel like you've all hosted us and invited us into your work and world. And, you know, something that Linda said, I think at the beginning, that the theory doesn't let us down. And as I've been listening, just how it's lived through all of you to really create these beautiful moments. And I've loved kind of how the poetry is woven in and out of the story that you've been telling. It has me kind of wanting to go write. Just to, you know, kind of take this experience that I'm having now and put some words to it. in a more poetic way that I'm. Yeah, there are just so many pieces, and then I think the images of just grabbing somebody's arm, joining, writing an email, to kind of lift up someone that is going to bring something special. Yeah, I'm just so grateful to start the day like this. Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Please.
Yes, I'm thinking also about Luis Rodriguez, who's done a lot of poetry work in inner city America, uses this beautiful term of he says we need more child whispering going on. And when I'm with Marsha, she does that youth whispering. So beautiful. Yeah.
Well, we have to come to an end, sadly.
Yeah.
Can we hear a little bit from Linda about her own experience of listening to Therese and Marsha?
Linda, your mic is off. There you go.
Go with that image of the shawl, and if you want to learn a bit of local Afrikaans, it's spelled TJALIE, and it's pronounced Charlie. And if that practice of wrapping a shawl is something that I can see Therese and Marsha do for each other, and Marsha does for her community of children, and she's joined one of our narrative mentorship groups recently, and that experience of massive shawls just wrapping people and holding people, the experience of this morning. So I nearly didn't come. I'm a little bit of a social performance phobe. So I did the okay, no, you're okay, no, a few times before. Driving Therese mad, I'm sure. But I experienced this platform as a massive Charlie. Thank you for being the shawl as you listened, and I could see the delight in your faces and your beautiful responses to us. We do not feel alone now on the tip of Africa. We feel joined.
Thank you. Well said. Beautifully said.
When you eat your next sandwich, now we'll be thinking of you. Thank you all so much, Therese. Love you. And thank you, Suzanne and Aju. We're our way about to continue on in Africa.